alternate Ivy Pliss, as well as a new member, Jessica Patterson. So welcome, ladies, and hope you enjoy our proceedings as much as we enjoy being a part of it.
Calligan?
Yes.
Welcome aboard.
Thanks.
So we'll call the meeting to order. There are no alternates to seat. I'd like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. As a part of our electronic web-based call, I offer the following information. This is a web-based call, so we're operating under the following procedures. This session is being audio recorded. Please be advised that today we are also recording the video of the proceedings. We will not use the chat feature in this meeting. To ensure sound quality, the default rule for this meeting is that everyone will remain on mute. Commissioners and staff will generally remain on mute except when speaking or voting. This meeting is open to the public, but it is not a public hearing. Therefore, no members of the public may speak unless specifically invited to do so. If a member of the public creates an audio or video disruption, they may be manually ejected from the meeting upon the recommendation of staff or chair. We appreciate your attendance at this meeting. Should you have any questions about the process, you may call our staff at 860-444-5813 after the meeting has ended. Item number 2 on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the August 27th, 2020 meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion. Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Michael Stanko abstaining, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Michael.
I'm also abstaining. Geneva Reniger.
Thank you. Item number 3, application review. C20-15, number 140 Waterford Parkway South. Concrete products manufacturing and outdoor storage. Fabcon Precast applicant. Methon Fund 1 LLC owner. Lorero agent. Questions, comments?
Mr. Chair, staff had prepared staff had prepared comments on the application submitted to the commission. I think you got them in your packet, I hope.
Yes.
On Tuesday when we were back in business. They were forwarded to the applicant. I believe the applicant tonight has some responses or some more information they want to share with the commission.
Thank you, Maureen. Does the applicant have any comments?
Yes, I do. Good evening, Commission. And Maureen, thank you for the introduction. I'm Seamus Moran. Again, I'm a PE in Connecticut. I work for Lorero Engineering Associates, and I'm representing the applicant, Fabcon Precast. Can everybody hear me?
I can. Thank you, Sam.
Okay, good. So we received some comments from Maureen. I think they were dated Friday, September 4th. So we received those. I think it was an 8-page letter. A couple of the pages were what's in compliant, what are some of her recommendations. So we spent the last couple of days updating some of the plans and providing some responses to her comments. We wanted to get as many of the comments addressed before the meeting so we could relay those to you. So that's what we tried to do. We submitted that letter to Maureen at about 3 o'clock today, so I'm sure you do not have it yet. I also prepared a brief presentation That includes those meeting minutes and also some of the plan revisions that we've done since the first submission back in July 31st, I believe it was. So I can certainly go over those with you unless there are questions to start. If anybody has any questions since the last meeting, I'd be happy to take those first.
What I'd like to do, Mr. Moran, is address your point of, are there any questions from the last meeting? Does anyone on the commission have any questions relative to the proceedings from our last meeting? Okay, I don't hear any. I don't see any hands. I think personally what I'd like to see,
I have a question.
Tally?
Yes, to Maureen. I sent you an email this afternoon, Maureen. The applicant stated that there would be 50 truck trips a day. And my concern is about the Jordan Brook crossing on the street, if something would happen to the trucks. Who is responsible for that, for protecting the Jordan Brook there? I drove by the street and saw the brook and the closeness to the road. If something would spill going to the plant site.
Parkway South is owned by the state DOT. It is maintained by the town of Waterford. If a spill occurred, as if in any other roadway, there would be emergency response, I'm sure, and whatever measures need to be done for spill containment through the state's response. That's the only thing I can tell you at this point, Tally. It's not something that's in a plan.
No, it's not in the plans, but it's a concern because of the traffic, increase of
Of
traffic.
course.
I'd like to follow up on that if I may. Mr. Chair, may I have the floor?
Yes, yeah, go ahead, David.
Okay, so the last meeting, I raised that exact issue with the applicant, and the reply I think I remember I got was that, well, that's not, the stream runs under the road, but that's not our property. That's Coca-Cola's property. And I said, yep, I appreciate that, and I understand it. So, and I said, I don't know who has the responsibility here for this, because I honestly think that this is probably one of the highest risk places for additional sediment and from trucks to wash into the water, particularly trucks that are working the site during construction phase, because it's very likely trucks with mud, whatever else is going to traverse the road back and forth, and with mud and whatever, rain's going to come, it's going to wash additional material into the river. So something probably needs to be done, and I'm not sure who takes responsibility for it, but something needs to be done, I would say, to alleviate those problems of additional sediment, particularly from tires, from whatever, it's going to be flopping on the road to get into the brook by wash off or whatever. It's once the construction site is cleaned up and all, the trucks going back and forth, probably be a little cleaner. I don't know, but that's the reason why I asked how many trucks we're going to be going through. And as Tally mentioned, yeah, you're right. It might not be their property, but somebody needs to do something about making sure that water doesn't run over the road and down into the creek. That was our point. Thanks much.
Thank you, Mr. Larish.
Could I have a comment on that?
Mr. Thomas.
Yes, regarding that, I mean, the applicant will have to prepare a construction stormwater general permit, and it's going to be very rigorous. And I'm sure if there are problems with Waterford Parkway South with sediment getting tracked out, all it is a simple call to DEP to get it remedied. But I suspect the applicant, knowing the sensitivity of the watershed, will make every attempt
possible to have clean trucks. I mean, they don't want calls up to DEP or whatever, you know, neglecting the fact of ownership on the whole thing. I'm sure they are going to run a clean operation, I would suspect. Thank you.
Yeah, Wade, I agree with you. I think that there's always that possibility. And, you know, I
saw
throw it
Jeff-
out there for consideration.
Mr. Moran?
I'm sorry, I just see Jeff Prince's hand is up, and I don't know if he wants to say something in regards to that. I can also jump in after his comment.
Well, I just wanted to return the comment that we do in fact intend to have a truck wash-off pad for construction vehicles leaving the site where they would otherwise gain sediment, so that the sediment will be reduced by that wash-off pad on exit from the site, to help alleviate those particular concerns. And I appreciate Mr. Thomas's comments about the construction slip, because it is rather detailed. Seamus, please follow up if I missed something in that comment.
No, that's correct. And Wade was also correct. There will be a construction SWIP. There will be an industrial SWIP as well for, construction SWIP during construction to make sure there's no sediment deposits or anything like that. And also an industrial SWIP upon completion of the construction. So those will have to be reported to the state. The state will be monitoring that throughout construction and post-construction. So thank you for bringing that up, Wade. And with regard to traffic along Jordan Brook, I'm sorry, not Jordan Brook, along Waterford Parkway South, there will be extra vehicles, of course, with this development. Most of them after, post-construction will be transport vehicles, transporting materials in and out. They will not be dumping. We don't anticipate these trucks to be covered in sediment. And to the point that if there's a spill or anything, yeah, I mean, that's certainly, that could happen. If there is a spill, we can't design for that. You can't design for accidents or spills. I mean, there will be a spill containment on the site, but we can't predict accidents or anything out in the street. So that just to cover that quick point, that we will do everything we can on our site to maintain and make sure that there are preventative measures installed in the case of a spill or anything like that. But what we can't do is out on the road. We can't do it on Waterford Parkway South. We can't do it on I-95. Can't do it anywhere that isn't our jurisdiction. So that's all. Just wanted to point that out. But we appreciate your comments and we understand. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you very much.
Peter, if I could ask you to also comment with regard to the volume of traffic with regard to on Waterford Parkway South as compared to the volume of traffic under the state highway in which Jordan Brook also crosses. Do we happen to know percentage-wise what that might be, Mr. Moran?
I'm sorry, percentage of traffic on I-95 versus percentage of traffic on Waterford Parkway South?
Correct.
I don't know what the percentage would be. I can certainly ask the traffic engineer if he knows what the traffic counts are on I-95, but obviously I-95 is a very well-traveled corridor. So we could figure out what those numbers are. And we all obviously know our traffic counts down at our end of the site. So if we have, say there's 50,000 vehicles on I-95 and there's 50 to 100 vehicles, you're looking at, 1/1000th of percentage or something like that. So we can certainly look into that.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. Are there any questions relative to the previous meeting? If there are none, I'd like to move on.
If I can ask a question real quick.
Mr. Thomas?
I went through the drainage report and everything's very conservative as far as the assumptions and everything, and I guess the only question I had, the summaries are pretty straightforward. The infiltration practices, are they designed to drain within 24 to 72 hours after the storm event?
So that's a good question. Thank you for bringing that up. We didn't run the calculation for it, but the basins are very wide and the pooling is only about, I think at the most is about 2.5 feet deep. And with an infiltration rate, I can just tell you right now, if it's 2.5 feet, that would be 12 inches divided by 1.5 inches per hour. You're looking at, in 20 hours, they would drain for a 2.5 foot deep pool with an infiltration rate of 1.5 inches per hour.
assuming there's no groundwater mounding up, which I doubt there will be for the lesser storms. It's okay.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions for Mr. Moran? If we have no other questions, I guess it would be appropriate to move into the comments that staff has presented. And I think the simplest way would probably be to take them one by one, Mr. Moran.
Sure,
Beginning
of course.
with,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
right.
Maureen, if you have the, do you have the presentation that I sent over about 5 o'clock today? No.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, Janice, no, if you have it, we can share the screen with you.
Okay. Sure. That'd be great. I do have a presentation. If I can share the screen. Okay. So it says host disabled participant screen sharing. So if you enable screen sharing for me, I can certainly share that with everybody.
Are you okay with that, Ken?
Yeah,
We're working on it, Janice, hang on.
Of course.
oh, you should be able, I think you can do it now.
All right. Try. Oh, you got it. All right, perfect. So I will share my screen and I'll talk you guys through everything. So can everybody see my screen now?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, good.
Excellent. Okay, so this is, there's a few pages in this, but I will try and go through it quickly. I don't want to keep everybody all night, hold everybody hostage. So again, you guys know the project. It's what this presentation is just a summary of the plan revisions that we submitted to Maureen earlier today. Some of those revisions were based on comments that Maureen provided. Some were comments based on comments that the wetland scientists provided. Some were by Jim Cowan, and some were just generic comments. So the first slide here is general revisions that we made since the July 31st submission, which includes stormwater management system maintenance plan has been updated to include the hydrodynamic separator and water quality unit. Those were added to the plans since the July 31st submission, so we had to add the maintenance plan to it. The separators have now been sized, and one thing that was shown that I discussed in the first meeting was there is what I thought was an existing outlet pipe from basin C2 in the southeast corner. I thought that was installed. When I went out there and looked for it, I could not find it, so I now think that it was not installed. So I removed that from the plans.
Can you get me a-
So on the next sheet, I'll just go over that.
Seamus, hang on a sec, Seamus?
Yep.
Is that basin C2 or E2? E2 is the one farthest in the southeast, correct?
Yes, that's correct. This is a typo. You're absolutely correct. Thank you.
Okay, so I just want to correct that for the commission. That's the basin that's farthest, that discharges almost directly to Nevins Brook from the old 1990s approved subdivision.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So that was not installed. So thank you for correcting me on that. So next slide is just, all I'm going to do, the slides will say what we did. Then I'll show you on the plans what we did. So when you review the revised plans, you'll know where to look. So the maintenance notes that I mentioned are up in the upper right-hand corner on the notes page. As I mentioned, the hydrodynamic separator and the water quality unit, we added those notes to it.
Mr. Moran, if I might, excuse me, please, for interrupting. Is there any way that as you go through these, that you can reference the particular item that Maureen has identified?
So what I can do, which is, what I ended up doing was I provided Maureen's comments with our response at the end of the presentation. If we want to just skip right to that, I can go to that, and maybe they overlap at some point.
No, I'd just like the commission to be able to identify which one of staff's comments that have been resolved by the changes that you're going to make.
Yeah, of course. And I can go over all of that.
I certainly want to see your presentation, as I'm sure the entire commission does. But I also want to try to kind of keep tabs on what we've got done and what possibly may be left to do. So
how about this? I'll breeze through all these plan revisions that we made that we made based on the wetland scientist, that we made based on the herpetologist. I'll just tell you what we did, and then we'll get into the comments, and we can go back and search for things.
Okay, thank you very much.
Of course. So again, oh, actually, I was on the right thing. So comments from the wetland scientist, Jim Cowan. We revised the plantings in the northeast corner of the storage yard and along basins C2 and C3. We revised the basin seed mixture. We added notes to install milkweed plugs in and around each basin. And we added the approximate location of vernal pool 1 and call out notes to add woody debris to the slopes of vernal pool 1 to enhance the amphibian habitat. For the herpetologist, I'll get to that in a second, Dennis Quinn, he asked that we add a wildlife barrier around the perimeter of the site, which we have added. It's a combination chain link fence and concrete barrier. There's a chain link fence where we do not want to withhold any of the runoff. We don't want to disturb the runoff or prevent it from getting to where it needs to go, and concrete barriers elsewhere. There was also a conservation easement around Jordan Brook, 300 feet on the west side and up to 300 feet on the east side. It's either up to the development or up to 300 feet, whichever is closer. So we added that to the plans, and we added a note to remove the invasive species within the conservation easement. All of those are recommendations by the herpetologist. Moving on. Some of the plan revisions that were based on Maureen's comments and conversations I had with Maureen was, we also added a water quality unit per Wade's comments at the earliest meeting, or I think it was the first meeting that we had with you guys. Wade mentioned the catch basins adjacent to the stockpile areas should have some treatment installed. So we propose a water quality unit now. That water quality unit, based on third-party testing, supports 88% total suspended solid removal and 80% oil and grease removal efficiency. In addition, we added 4-foot sumps to those catch basins in the other material stockpile areas. We also updated the storage yard cross-section based on the geotechnical report. We added 2 additional catch basins along the access drive, and we removed the outlet control structure for basin B2, which I'll get to momentarily. So those are the plan revisions that we got to based on Maureen's comments. We couldn't get to all of them yet. In my response to Maureen, I do address how we will be handling them. They did not make it into this plan set, but I wanted to get an idea in front of the commission of how that we were planning to handle that. So you guys can see that. So that, if we move on here, I can go down to Maureen's comments. You guys don't really care about HydroCAD modeling revisions, so we'll skip over that. We can come back to this one. This is a summary of the discharges. We talked about this at the last meeting. At each of the outfalls, we have the 25-year and 100-year discharge rates from the outlet pipes. So that could very well come in handy later as we're discussing this. There's a support letter from Jim Cowan saying we've incorporated all of his recommendations. He doesn't have any issues. There's also another support letter from Dennis Quinn, the herpetologist, saying similar. And then we get into Maureen's comments, followed by our comments. So if you see in this response here, Maureen's comments are in bold italicized. So I can read through all those, and I guess I can go through them quickly and explain what we did. It's probably going to take a few minutes if anybody has any questions before we get into them. Otherwise, I'll just get right into them. So does anybody have any questions?
Are there any questions? Any questions of Mr. Moran at this point?
I do. Dave Lurch,
Lurch?
if I may. So I read the report from the herpetologist, and I don't know how long the fence, chain link fence they're talking about, but really, is this, how much different for the commission members, how much different is this site than other sites where we've never required barriers like this for turtles to go onto, to surfaces? I mean, is this, I'm just wondering, is this more than really is needed? you know, it's a nice thing to do, but is the risk to that many turtles really all that great that you have to require, I don't know how long of a fence to be installed to keep the turtles from getting onto the hard surface and run over? And also the non-invasive species, you know, like bittersweet and those sort of things in the wetland area. I've always been very cautious of you know, we've always been very cautious of requiring removal of that. You know, those particularly if, you know, somebody wasn't going to do it by hand, it's a big task, you know, along that area. I don't know how much bittersweet or other or invasive species there are, but, you know, is that really critical? I appreciate the, honestly, I appreciate the expertise of the herpetologist. Honestly, I'm not a herpetologist. I don't know, but it isn't consistent with decisions we made in the past.
Could I comment, like we're involved with a fair amount of projects, and whenever you have potential for turtles, as far as the DEP concerns, I mean, as far as they're concerned, you cannot protect them enough. I mean, you have to come up with innovative ways to protect them and manage them. I mean, I know firsthand that it's a very onerous process. Thank you.
So in your mind, Wade, you don't think it's excessive in asking what they're asking? You think it's reasonable?
That's not really up to me. It's up to the regulator and the engineer, but I think sometimes we don't see the forest from the trees, I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, it's a matter of, is it a decision that we make here as a body of the Conservation Wetlands Commission, or is it a decision somebody else makes?
Well, I think it's a response to the DEP comments. I think the applicant's been very responsive and they should be commended for it.
Oh, most certainly. I've never seen so much detail as far as protecting of various species, avian, terrestrial, and those sort of things. Really.
Thank you, Mr. Lersch. Any other questions?
No, sir, I don't.
I can just jump in and answer that. So I had almost the exact same question of the herpetologist, because I thought what we were recommending, or what he was recommending in this first letter, seemed like a lot. There was, you know, protective barrier, that was a conservation zone. There were some plantings that he wanted in there. So we had a conversation about 2 weeks ago about, I mean, what can we do here? I mean, he was, you know, we can do a conservation easement, and one thing he did not want to budge on was this wildlife barrier. And he said it's because turtles can migrate if they end up, I wanted to do it on part of the site. I wanted to do it on the western half where he noticed some of witnessed some of the turtles. He said, well, you can't just do it on the west half because they can migrate, you know, up to 1,200 feet. If they migrate around it and they get stuck, they're going to get stuck there forever. They're going to die. And if any of these turtles are not protected, or he said if there were no wildlife barrier, that their population may be decimated in about 10 years, is what his conservative concern is. So that's why he would not budge on that. And that's why we kept that in. And we agree. I think it is a lot, but we also want to make turtles happy. So with a
Sure. Oh, I know that I've seen curbing with areas in it that are lower so that the terrapins can climb over the curbs, just because the curbs are too high for them to get in, and they do get trapped. So thank you for following up with that in the added explanation. I appreciate that, Seamus.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll just get into Maureen's comments. I'll read through them and provide our response.
I don't have any questions, Seamus, but I am sorry, everyone. I do have to go. Something's come up. So I will have to leave for the remainder of the meeting. I'm terribly sorry for that, but I will rejoin at some point forward. So thank you very much. Good evening, everyone.
Mr. Chair? Rich,
Yes.
we do have an alternate that can sit for Michael. That would be Julie.
Okay. Let the minutes show that that the alternate was seated for Mr. Stankoff. I guess we're ready, Mr. Moran.
Okay. So Maureen's first comment was comment 1A, protection of wetlands and wetland habitat function. So 1A is concerns about the cold water fishery. So she says, Jordan Brook is a documented cold water fishery. The applicant should include an assessment of potential indirect impacts of this resource, an evaluation of the proposed and potential mitigation measures to protect in-stream habitat, channel and substrate stability, water quality, and temperature. Maintenance and protection of a vegetative buffer adjacent to a stream is recommended measured to conserve cold water fishery resources. The site plan should identify riparian corridor protection measures. We do have a letter from Jim Cowan in support of our plans and how they meet all the trout recommendations. The infiltration basins are great at thermal properties of runoff. And also with the conservation easement up to 300 feet, that encumbers the entire 100-foot riparian buffer. So there will be no development in a riparian corridor in the future. And on top of that, we have plantings proposed along the entire western edge of development. And we are proposing to remove invasive species every 5 to 7 years within the conservation area, every 5 to 7 years thereafter. So this conservation area is on the plan stated September 8th. Comment 1B, the wetland report identifies vernal pool 1 on the east side of the development area within the Nevins Brook wetland. Measures are recommended to improve amphibian habitat west of the vernal pool envelope, including substrate enhancements and plantings. These measures need to be indicated on the site plans. An assessment of potential impacts of vernal pool 1's and its critical habitat is requested. Per the recommendations, so our response is per the recommendations of the project wetland scientist Jim Cowan. A call out has been added to sheet 31 of 42, which states install logs and coarse woody debris scattered on slopes around vernal pool 1, excuse me, to be located in the field under direction of project wetland scientist. Also, please refer to his letter, which I attached. 1C is the subject property includes a large wooded area west of Jordan Brook. No development is indicated in this area. It's a potential future crossing of Jordan Brook to access this land for development under consideration by the applicant. Our response is that the applicant has no immediate plans for development on the west side of Jordan Brook. However, a 50-foot break in the conservation easement is proposed for future maintenance or improvements of the Jordan Brook crossing. Item 1D, the turtle conservation zone referred to in the application documents and approved by Connecticut Deep for the conservation of species of concern and the enhancement of the proposed conservation area on both the east and west shorelines of Jordan Brook need to be indicated on the site plans. The proposed type and extent of vegetation management practices to remove invasive species, reseed, plan, and manage for early late successional field habitat should be indicated as they involve activity within the upland review area. The conservation zone has been added to the revised site plan, set dated September 8th, 2020, and a letter of support has been provided by the project herpetologist, Dennis Quinn. It was agreed to that the additional plantings are not required within the conservation easement as removing invasive species, more particularly autumn olive, offers more substantial enhancements to the early late successional turtle nesting habitat than the additional plantings. So that was back to my comment. Dave asked what we could do, and that was a comment that we had as well, and that was removed 2 weeks ago. So 1E. Site plans and application should clarify the extent of disturbance in the old field area east of the Eversource storage yard in the northeast portion of the site and in the northwest portion adjacent to Jordan Brook. Are these areas to be maintained as old field to provide the recommended mosaic of habitat types supporting turtle and bird species of concern? The geotechnical report and environmental due diligence reports show the northeast area as a storage yard. Please clarify limit of proposed disturbance in these areas. Our response is clearing limits are shown in the existing addition and demolition plan. No storage yard is proposed in the northeast corner of the site. We have not proposed any protective maintenance or protective maintenance measures for the old field. However, much of this area will be placed in the proposed conservation easement. So item number 2 is the stormwater treatment and mitigation of indirect impacts. So 2A is the location of material stockpile areas, loading bays, and containment measures to prevent fines from entering the stormwater treatment system should be identified. Surface storage areas on paved surfaces should be protected with berms, grading, or other measures to prevent discharge of sediment to catch basins. Our response, item 1 in our response is stormwater improvements proposed within Stormwater Management Area B to prevent fines from entering the stormwater treatment system include the following. Water quality unit. An offline ADS water quality unit is proposed downgrading of the catch basins immediately adjacent to the material stockpile areas. Full scale laboratory testing of the water quality unit conducted by Alden Labs in Holden, Mass. Showed an average removal rate of 88.3% for total suspended solids and 80% for oil and grease. The water quality unit has been sized to treat the water quality flow for the runoff from the area draining to the catch basins immediately adjacent to the material stockpile areas. The water quality unit testing report and sizing calculations are enclosed herewith. B would be catch basins with 4-foot sumps. 4-foot sumps are proposed in the catch basins adjacent to the material stockpile areas and in the terminus catch basin before the infiltration basin B2, inline sediment, before the inline sediment forebay. Response number 2 is that the reclaimed aggregate storage pit shown on the plans will contain washed gravel that will be removed as a waste product on an ongoing basis. The reclaimer in the building removes solid aggregate from concrete slurry created by dilution of waste concrete by spray washing of machinery with recycled water and will not contain significant fines. Reclaimed aggregate storage pile will be impounded by 3-sided low walls separate from the dock. Materials within this pile are routinely removed from the pile. So that has not been added to the plan yet, but I did want to include that as a response. 2B, the size and capacity of the pretreatment forebays within the storage yard should be identified on the site plans. Calculations for the sediment loadings for the gravel storage yards, these forebays should be developed and the bays sized accordingly. The size and capacity of the offline forebays will be added to the site plan. They have not yet. Sediment loadings will also be calculated and will be provided. The effects of the stored concrete panels on site impervious area does not appear to be considered in the runoff calculations or the storage yard. What effect does the storage of these panels have on pervious area available? What portion of storage yard runoff is designed to infiltrate into the in-situ gravels versus discharge to pre-treatment forebays and perimeter stormwater infiltration basins? So this is a good comment. As the yard is filled, panels will be placed. They will be placed. It's not a permanent thing. It's not like we're installing concrete sidewalks throughout, but we expect that if it was fully utilized, it would be about 50% of the usable space would be occupied by concrete panels. So we will have to revise our model to show that we're including those. So the curve number we already had was very high. I think it was an 85 curve number in terms of the HydroCAD model. By weighting that with the impervious, it's probably going to go to about a 91 or a 92. So it will add runoff. We do have capacity. We have capacity, I guess, in E and F to tinker with it a little bit to make up for that increase in the runoff. So that is a minor thing that we will look into. And we will be revising our plans in the HydroCAD model based on that. 2D, an inspection and maintenance schedule for these pretreatment forebays needs to be developed and included in the stormwater management plan. What measures are proposed to protect these areas from storage yard activity? An inspection and maintenance schedule will be included in the stormwater management plan. A chain link fence will be provided around the offline forebays to prevent vehicle entry or storage of panels. So essentially, we haven't done it yet. Again, I wanted to get these comments to everybody so we could discuss them and present them. We are going to put a fence around these areas so they do not place panels. It will be a depression in the ground, so they wouldn't want to put them there anyway. But this area, we will also develop a management plan for it. What we're thinking is it's going to be gravel of some sort, probably a riprap that will be replaced annually, possibly, maybe 6 months. We have to see. We'll have to do it probably every 6 months for the first year to see how much sediment is resultant from the runoff, and then modified from there. So 2E, the commission has raised concern with the potential for dust and fines from the storage yard operation impacting the stormwater system and adjacent wetlands. The applicant should provide practices, surface treatment, and other control measures proposed to minimize discharge of fines from storage yard operations. Is a crushed stone surface on the gantry pass an alternative treatment? Are evergreen plantings proposed along the fence line to provide a potential filter? So per the geotechnical engineering evaluation dated June 22nd, prepared by Haley and Aldrich, the gravel storage yard cross-section will consist of a 3.5-inch layer of washed crushed stone, the top 8 inches of processed aggregate base. So that'll be throughout. That was Haley and Aldrich considered the gantry cranes, considered the storage of panels, and that was their recommendation. So we carried that over to our site plans. A watering truck for dust suppression will be available on site and used as necessary for dust control. This is a truck that stays on site year-round, 24/7, so they will be able to monitor any dust and provide any control, any suppression. A landscaping buffer is provided along the entirety of the western and southern sides of the storage yard and along 2/3 of the eastern side of the storage yard. 2F, inclusion of stormwater treatment practices for the existing site access driveway are recommended. Low impact development practices such as vegetated swales, tree filter inserts at curb cuts, or rain gardens can be effective in treating stormwater pollutants near the source of vehicle activity to and from the site. So the revised site plan set dated September 8, 2020 has been amended to show 2 new catch basins along the entry to capture runoff generated along the site access driveway. Runoff from those catch basins will be conveyed to an infiltration basin B2, which includes an inline sediment forebay. Use of the access drive will be limited to vehicles entering and exiting the facility. It will not include loading or unloading of any vehicles. As such, we do not anticipate substantial, if any, pollutant loadings to the stormwater management system from these vehicles during transport. Additional pre-treatment measures are provided in areas of proposed loading and unloading of vehicles. So all of what I'm saying there is, I saw Maureen's comments, and it would be difficult based on what's there now. It's a curbed roadway to regrade the whole thing, to create swales, to do low impact features along an access road that's already constructed. But we are proposing catch basins to capture that runoff, and I believe our stormwater system is extensive, and all of our pre-treatments available will be able to monitor, to be able to treat any of the sediment generated in that access road. The 2G, clarify the design of infiltration basin A2 outlet, clarify the design of infiltration basin A2 outlet to the subsurface storm tech chambers A1. The chambers are primarily accepting a portion of the structure's roof and runoff, and this subsurface system is directed toward Jordan Brook. Overflow from basin A2 can diminish capacity of the infiltration chambers to store roof runoff for infiltration. Can basin A2 be expanded to attenuate the 10-year runoff and discharge to the upland review area? So our response is that basin A2 is actually designed with enough storage to infiltrate the runoff from the 100-year storm event, and there is no discharge through the basin A2 outlet at the 100-year storm event. Therefore, basin A2 outlet control structure has been eliminated from the design. Basin A2 will have a riprap emergency spillway above the 100-year water surface elevation. The revised site plan set dated September 8th, 2020 has been amended to reflect these changes. So simply put, Maureen's comment is that she didn't want us to discharge our outlet structure into the storm tech units, which is correct. That wouldn't be a very good practice. But what that was, it was just an overflow at the 100-year. We're infiltrating the very minor area up there. We're infiltrating everything. And that was, the outlet structure was an emergency spillway. And then we also had an emergency spillway that was redundant on top of that in case that, for whatever reason, got blocked. So we've eliminated the outlet control structure altogether. And now just the emergency spillway is set above the 100-year flood elevation. So 2H, applicant is requested to provide calculations and rationale from infiltration basin E1 to a previously excavated stormwater detention basin E2 that discharges to Nevins Brook. The disturbance to the riparian area bordering Nevins Brook, a wetland of very high quality should be minimized. Alternative discharge locations closer to Basin E1 are available to dissipate the flows and avoid discharge to the Nevins Brook Channel. Basin E2 was excavated 30 years ago. The 15-inch RCP outlet pipe, as shown on the site plans, is not present in this basin. If Basin A2 is required to attenuate flow or pollutant loadings, more specific details of the current basin configuration, elevations, and proposed improvements to the outlet are required on the site plans. Our response is that all flow attenuation and water quality treatment is being accomplished in the proposed infiltration basin E1 and the preceding pretreatment practices. The previously excavated detention basin E2 is currently in good condition, is well vegetated, has no evidence of standing water, and has a graded vegetated spillway located outside the 100-foot upland review area. Due to these factors, it was determined that discharging to basin E2 would be more favorable than creating a point discharge location to the north of basin E1 that would result in disturbance within the 100-foot upland review area. As proposed, basin E1 only discharges to basin E2 for storms exceeding the 10-year storm event. Basin E2 shows no discharge from the graded spillway for the 25-year storm event and minimal discharge, 1.06 CFS, for the 100-year storm event. For these reasons, we feel the discharging to the existing basin E2 is favorable to a separate discharge location within the 100-foot upland review area. The 15-inch RCP pipe, outlet pipe that was depicted on the site plans has been removed. Moving on to I, the stormwater outfall from proposed infiltration basin C2 is designed to discharge to a previously excavated detention basin C3. A large area of this prior basin will be filled as part of the proposed site construction. The proposed outlet discharges to a remaining portion of the old basin, then through a permeable berm section through an existing piped outlet. This outlet directly discharges to wetlands. The applicant is requested to identify the role of the remaining basin C3 in the attenuation of stormwater flows and any maintenance or corrective actions recommended to ensure the outlet and permeable berm are functional. From historical documents, these prior basins were sized for a 25-year storm event. So our response is that all flow attenuation and water quality treatments being accomplished in the proposed infiltration basin C2 and the preceding pretreatment practices. The previously excavated detention basin C3 is primarily being used for the discharge pipe that was previously established and is in good condition. The reduced storage capacity of the existing detention basin C3 due to the areas that will be filled as part of the proposed site construction has been accounted for in the HydroCAD model. As proposed, basin C2 only discharges to basin C3 for storms exceeding the 10-year storm event, and basin C3 shows minimal discharge from the existing outlet pipe for the 25-year and 100-year storm events. For the 25-year, there's 0.87 CFS discharge, and for the 100-year, it's 3.76 CFS. 2J is a detailed construction sequence and erosion sediment control narrative for the construction of basin C2 outlet into the previously constructed detention basin is requested. The excavated slopes of the old basin are steep. Stabilization of disturbed soils and outlet control measures will be required. Stability of the existing basin slopes and berm to contain discharge flows should be evaluated and corrective measures should be implemented where needed. Clearing around the existing outlet will be necessary to provide access for proposed monitoring and inspection of this discharge location. So the detailed construction sequence and narrative on sheet 2 will be revised accordingly. So we have not addressed that yet, but that will be addressed. A couple of these other ones we have not addressed, which we will, but so 2K is the location of the site perimeter fence should be identified on the plans and access to the basins and outfall areas indicated. A permanent wildlife barrier has been added to the plan set, which I discussed earlier. Access to the basin and outfall areas, access to the basins and outfall areas will be added to the plan set as well. 2L is installation of an oil water separator or spill containment unit is recommended in the on-site vehicle fueling area to contain accidental spills or releases of fuels to the gravel surface of infiltration system components. So our response is that an oil water separator will be added to the plan set in the vicinity of this on-site vehicle fueling area. 2M, infiltration basins should be constructed and stabilized in the initial construction phase to allow for vegetative vegetative stabilization of slopes and bioretention basin soils. Compaction of the infiltration bases is to be avoided during construction. Use of construction barriers or fencing is recommended. Post-construction as-built verification should be provided for basin size, substrate, outlet control structure, and planting, and in situ field infiltration testing conducted to verify basin infiltration rates. Our response is that infiltration basin construction sequence and construction methods are shown on the sheet 2 of 42 of the plan set. These notes include when to begin construction and how to avoid compaction of the basins. An as-built plan and drainage certification will be provided upon the completion of construction, not completion of completion. It should be upon the completion of construction. So 2N is monitoring of the stormwater treatment system is recommended per the Jordan Brook Watershed Management Plan. Monitoring should include the infiltration chambers and the infiltration basins, forebays, sediment deposition, soil stability, vegetation coverage, basin discharge, and substrate infiltration. So there's a maintenance and monitoring. The maintenance and monitoring requirements of the stormwater management system are included already on sheet 2 of 42 of the plan set. And all of those items are included in there. So item 3 is geotechnical report considerations. 3A, according to the geotechnical reports, dewatering of some building excavation areas will involve significant volumes of water due to the porosity of the sand and gravel substrate. Construction dewatering should be directed to upland containment / recharge areas away from adjacent inland wetlands to prevent erosion of sediment and sediment discharges to the wetland. Our response is that temporary dewatering details will be added to the detail sheet. A note will be included on the temporary dewatering details that will note that all dewatering should be directed to upland containment recharge areas away from adjacent inland wetlands to prevent erosion, sediment, and sediment discharge to wetlands. 3B, according to the Haley and Aldrich March 2020 environmental due diligence report, the location of infiltration chambers D1 is in proximity of the former fuel storage drum and waste oil spill locations associated with the prior airport facility. These areas were reported to be remediated by prior owners or parties. Soils in this infiltration area should be evaluated by an LEP during construction and any residual impacted soil removed and disposed of accordingly. Groundwater monitoring in these prior release areas is recommended in the due diligence report. Is this being conducted? Our response is that please refer to the environmental laboratory testing program section of the Haley and Aldrich preliminary geotech report dated April 2020. Within this section, Haley and Aldrich states laboratory chemical testing was undertaken on groundwater and select soil samples retrieved from recent subsurface explorations in support of our preliminary environmental evaluation. Observation well B6OW was placed in the vicinity of area of concern 1.3, which is former drum storage area and waste oil spill. Per the environmental testing results section of the preliminary geotech report, samples of groundwater obtained, from the observation wells in the building area contain low levels, i.e. below GA pollutant mobility criteria of VOCs and ETPH, which are likely associated with historical operations at the airport, i.e. storage and use of aviation fuels. As a result, no further action is necessary. Also, please refer to the construction observation section of Haley and Aldrich's final geotech report dated June 22nd, 2020. Within this section, Haley and Aldrich recommends that a technical or engineering personnel from Haley and Aldrich be present to provide the recommended special inspection observations and associated geotechnical engineering and environmental consulting services during earthwork, considering our familiarity with the subsurface conditions, design concept, and specifications. Haley and Aldrich would observe compliance with the design concept, specifications, recommendations, and approval and approved contractor submittals, and assist in developing design of construction changes in the event that subsurface conditions differ from those anticipated prior to construction. 3C, the fill slope on the east end of the proposed storage yard extends into the area of a previously closed landfill. The applicant should determine whether any state Connecticut DEP approvals are required for fill activity on closed landfill areas. So a response is that an authorization application for disruption of a solid waste disposal area must be submitted to the Connecticut DEP. On that note, when I spoke to another member of our company, George Andrews, another member of our company, he said that if you're filling, this really shouldn't be an issue. It's just the formality. You have to fill out a form that has to be completed and accepted by the DEP, and he doesn't see any issues with that form being submitted. So with that, I'm sorry that took forever. Those are Maureen's comments and our responses, whether we address them already in the plans or how we plan to address them. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to take them. I'm going to take a quick sip of water. So please fire away when ready.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. Do any of the commissioners have any questions based on the comments and presentation of Mr. Moran's presentation?
I do, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Larish.
Yeah, Mr. Moran, thank you for that very detailed description of each of these different items. I tell you, I greatly appreciate all the work that you've gone through to look at our comments and staff comments. The only question I have is for some of those that you mentioned that you haven't addressed yet, like for instance, number 2J, do you foresee that any of the ones you haven't addressed that you're going to have any difficulty addressing, or just like, I know it's a lot of work, maybe you just didn't get to it. Do you see any challenges here in addressing any of these comments as you go forward?
I don't. The only one that will take a little bit of work will be accounting for the impervious panels, which we hadn't accounted for. We accounted for a very high curve number based on the gravel subbase, but Maureen's point is well taken. If there are panels there and they are, face up, which we also have to confirm that if they're face up and they're occupying, 40 or 50% of the storage yard, that has potential to generate more runoff. So we just have to account for that in the HydroCAD model, which has not been accounted for, but that's a simple change, but it will take a little bit of work. That's all. All the other ones are pretty straightforward.
Great, thank you. And the only other comment that I would have to the rest of the commission is this, in this regards, the last comment we talked about, number 3, 3C, that DEP is, well, for some of my experience with them lately, it is extremely slow because of COVID and getting replies back, and that really is some issues that are, commonsensical or not really critical, that we shouldn't hold up production based upon some of these, DEP approvals. I don't know what way to go around them. Not really go around them, but all I'm saying is whenever now we start getting outside of here for another agency, and I'm sure, Seamus, you've had some difficulty probably getting to the right people in at DEP. For this one issue in particular, is it really that important that you get their answer in writing before going forward? Do you see challenges? Do you see, basically the question is, do you see challenges in getting any other DEP approvals or DEP comments?
So for this one in particular that you're referencing, 3C, when I spoke to George Andrews from our company, he said this is literally a formality. They'll sign off on it. This will be the quickest DEP approval you'll get because everything else takes forever. He said this one should go pretty quickly. Obviously, we have to get several other items, several other permits, which may take more time. But we're in the process of those as well.
I understand. There's a lot of different agencies you have to work with. Thank you, sir. I have no more questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lurish.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Maureen?
just as a follow-up to Dave's first question, those issues are really outside and beyond the jurisdiction of this commission under inland wetlands. I just brought them up as issues in my comprehensive review. There are no wetlands associated or wetland impacts associated with that graded fill slope into that closed landfill.
Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you, Maureen.
Mr. Moran, I have a question, and I think you answered it, but I just want to be sure that I understood your answer. If I'm not correct, please correct me. The storage area, last meeting, it was addressed as a concern for the travel of the gantries. And I think in your comment, your response to Maureen's comment, you stated that that area now is planned to be covered with 3 inches of crushed stone. Is that correct?
That's correct. The Halion, by asking the question, you forced us to actually look at our own documents, which is, we thank you for that. Halion Aldrich did recommend a cross section in there. They recommend 3.5 inches of crushed stone on top of a processed aggregate. And the goal is obviously to do that everywhere. It's probably going to be in steps. They're probably not going to be doing the entire storage yard immediately first thing. They will be grading it, but they'll probably be coating it with the crushed stone as the need develops, as panels are produced. I believe they probably don't envision filling up the storage yard in the first couple months. So I'm sure Jeff can correct me if I'm wrong in that, but I do believe there'll be a stepped process of filling in the storage yard.
Yes. I think that we would like to stage the surface improvements as the yard is required. We'd make all the grading changes so that the drainage could be handled properly, but then make the surface improvements with the crushed stone and gravel on an as needed basis as the yard is necessary, as the yard gets populated with panels.
I guess I would defer to staff for your opinion, Maureen, of that process.
That's how much I have an opinion. I'm glad that it was clarified that there will be some kind of stone surface over this sand and gravel substrate. And we can certainly make that a condition and when the commission goes forward and to have that's done in stages and required on plans and submittals.
Thank you. Is that area, is the perimeter road around the storage area, is that curved? I don't recall.
That's actually a loop inside the area. There is areas outside that perimeter road, if you would, Mr. Chair, as well, that is used for storage, as well as inside the perimeter road. So there's a loop and both sides of the road are used.
And the catch basins are sufficient to capture all of that runoff? If I recall looking at the plans, there are catch basins on the perimeter road of the storage area. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
So the portions of the road, there's actually not much draining to the roads because we want to get more pre-treatment. So we're getting the interior of the storage yard is all draining to the middle. We're draining some of the exterior of the storage yard to the roads, but I guess on the east side, it's all draining towards the road. On the west side, it's about 50-50. Some of it's draining to the west into a stone swale that has a perforated pipe in it. The east half of the western storage yard is draining to the road. So there's actually not much volume draining to the catch basins in the roads.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the commission? Are there any other questions from the commission? Are there any other questions from the commission? Thank you, Mr. Moran, for your detailed presentation.
Thank you.
I'll ask one more time. Are there any other questions from the Conservation Commissioners?
No, I don't.
Okay,
I guess one thing, if I could, obviously Maureen's, I mean, on first brush, would you say that the comments have been satisfactorily addressed? I don't mean to put you on the spot. I mean, you're going to obviously need more time to review it, but I think they appear to be very responsive to the comments. And I guess I want to gauge your level of comfort. Thank you.
Primarily, the questions I raised with the operation of the stormwater system is because I'm not a civil engineer. I just wanted to understand how everything worked. And I thank Seamus for taking the time to add the comments on the plan so they could be enforceable. Of most import is I'm very happy to see that the applicant is amenable to granting the conservation easement over the Jordan Brook cold water fishery, which is consistent with the Jordan Brook management plan, consistent with the practices that we received from Coca-Cola development, and above 95 what we received from Walmart development. I think it goes well into conforming to the Jordan Brook watershed management plan. And I believe we can work with whatever vegetation management protocols that are put in place, probably by DEP mostly in response to Dave's comments. That's going to be something they enforce through their permitting for their stormwater permits. And we will work with that. I was more concerned how much excavation would be required, and it sounds like it would mostly manual removal of invasive species. So with that, just a fingernail brush from the comprehensive responses, which I did not receive tonight because I was not in my office. I will get back to the commission with any follow-up, and certainly we'll have time afforded with the applicant if there are any further follow-ups that need to be done. Thank you, Wade.
Thank you, Maureen. Mr. Moran, I have one question. I forwarded an email to staff, and I believe that it might have been forwarded to you as well. I'd be interested to see what the process is for these gantries as they move about the storage yard. And I would be very surprised if a company the size that we're talking about doesn't have some sort of demonstration video that we could take a look at.
I can probably pass that off to Jeff, but we did receive that. Thank you. I don't know if we have one available, but if we haven't asked yet, I'm sure that that's something we can probably obtain for you.
We'll make a presentation video available to the chair. Apologies that we didn't have the opportunity to complete it before this hearing.
Thank you very much. I have one final question for the commission before we move on. At some point, we have to make a decision of whether we think that it's reasonable to conduct a public hearing for this application. And I would like the opinion and response of the commission with regards to that question.
Mr. Chair, may I address?
Go ahead, Dave.
Flourish?
Okay, thanks. Staff, have we received any petitions or any interest from the public?
This is Town Attorney Rob Avina. We have one email that's part of the record now from Mr. Ferry, who's up in the residential retirement village above the project. In regard to his concerns, I want to share with you that he is discussing in his email issues relating to traffic, noise, hours of operation, impact on the quality of life and the environment. Obviously, in the detailed review you've just gone through on this revised application, the question is, those concerns I want to advise the commission, because we require a special permit for these type of applications in the industrial zone. There will be a public hearing. The public hearing is busy being reviewed and will be discussed with the planning and zoning. Obviously, with my guidance, the planning and zoning special permit criteria includes the issues that Mr. Ferry has raised regarding traffic, noise, hours of operation, impact on the quality of life and the environment. So the question to my Wetlands Commission is, That's the concern neighbors may have. Those concerns are going to be taking up the planning and zoning. I would bring you back to 9.1 as Mr. Lurch was starting to go through, is the other concerns that you have as a commission to review for the wetlands impact.
All right, and I'll give you my opinion on those other issues. As far as significant impact, given the precautions and the detail of the construction details, I don't see a significant impact on the waterway, and the as far as the public interest goes, I would also probably be less inclined to take that into account in requiring a hearing. That's just my point of view. So in my view, I am not in favor of a public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Lurch.
I'd
Mr.
like
Thomas?
to speak,
Mr.
Wade Thomas. Yeah, I think the applicant's done a very thorough job in responding to everything, and if in Maureen's review, everything appears to be in order, I don't think I see the need for a public hearing.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Medelis? Sally, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it. I'll pass.
Okay. The chair votes no. Ms. Renegar?
Yes, hi. Geneva Reniger, board member. I feel after the presentation and the follow-up responses, this has been well thought out. I think all the issues are being addressed in the proper manner. I don't see a need, and I say no for a public hearing.
Thank you. Ms. Patterson?
Thank you. I'd like to agree with the other board members. I don't think there is need for a public hearing. The review and explanation was very inclusive, I found. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bliss? Ivy, you're on mute.
Ivy's not seated.
I'm not seated.
Ivy's not seated, Rich.
I'm sorry?
Julie is seated, not Ivy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Julie?
Julie Wainscott, thank you. Yeah, I agree that a public hearing is not necessary. This has been a very thorough presentation and follow-up response. My only, I guess, one hesitation would be, I'm curious to see what that video would be, which might address the level of noise, the level of, what their hours and their actual process of this production.
And again, as we've stated, that really comes under the jurisdiction of planning and zoning.
Right.
Hopefully that the applicant will have something for us before then. And lastly, Mr. Vandalis.
Abstain.
Thank you. So the vote is 7.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Town Attorney Rob Avina. So can I get a motion and a second that basically under 9.1, the commission is voting and determining that this proposed activity would not have a significant impact on the wetlands and water courses, and therefore does not need a public hearing.
So made.
Mr. Thomas makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Geneva Reniger.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? And the tally would be 6 no and 1 abstain.
6 agree. 6 yes.
So we do not require a public hearing.
6 yes. 6 agree.
If you'd like to take a roll call vote,
Well, I think we already did that, Dave.
We already did it. We're good.
okay. Sorry, thanks.
Are we all set, Mr. Avina?
I believe so. Do we have, Ms. Secretary, so we got a 6-0 vote in favor of that motion with 1 abstention.
That's correct. That we not have a public hearing.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that concludes our action on this application for this evening. Thank you, Mr. Moran, Mr. Prince, for your comments and information. Again, I'd like to second the feelings of other board, other commission members that your presentation was very detailed and addressed the comments directly, and we certainly appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your time tonight.
All right, very good.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Next item on the agenda is C 20-16, number 170 Rope Ferry Road, 2-lot re-subdivision, St. Paul Catholic Church Corporation, owner and applicant, Floric and Surveying LLC agent. And as I mentioned at our last meeting, I have some direct association with the owner, and I would hereby recuse myself from the proceedings and ask Mr. Medelis if he would take the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good night, folks. Have a pleasant evening.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, Richard.
Maureen, does staff have any comments on this application?
He's gone. I can take my mask off now. So I can speak better. I did have the opportunity to walk the site. I actually walked it also. Julie Wainscott came out. I don't know if anyone else had an opportunity to walk the property. It's a very interesting property. I'll recap from last meeting. And Brian Floric, the surveyor, is here also to address the commission. Just as a recap, this is a request by the owner to subdivide property, but because it's a re-subdivision, in other words, they've already subdivided a parcel off in the past, it needs to go to planning and zoning. It's not just a lot split. So in order to go to planning and zoning, they have to demonstrate that the lot piece that they're breaking off meets and can sustain a residence. So everything you're looking at on this plan is probably conceptual until someone buys a lot and decides where they want to build the house. But they have demonstrated that the house meets the setbacks and that they can put a proposed potential septic system in here. The reason it gets in front of this Inland Wetlands Commission is because of the proximity of this proposed concept to inland wetlands. There was a report from Cowan Eco Design LLC that was part of the packet that dated May 5th that we received on August 25th. That was the results of his wetland investigation. The property is an old quarry. So a lot of the pockets, the small areas that you see on these plans, which are 40 scale, these small pockets in the vicinity of the proposed. No. Oh yeah, can you bring that up? Katrina's going to bring it up for you. The small pocket wetlands that you see in the vicinity, basically within the 100-foot upland review area of this proposed house location, are old excavation areas. Hang on, Katrina's going to bring it up. It'll be like the second to last thing on the list. Okay.
Yeah.
Hang on, Mr. Chair. In the Jim Cowan report, he had investigated all these small pockets for their through January, March, and April for the presence of amphibian breeding for their vernal pools. And 3 of them, which are farther to the east, farther to the east of the proposed development site, were found to contain egg masses of spotted salamander. But the ones in closest proximity to, hang on, we're going to get up and get the map up. Go to the next one. Next one. This one. Right here. Okay. Next one.
One more.
Yeah. Here we go. Thanks, Brian. And I'm going to give it to you.
Yeah.
So I can't point them out to you, but the 3 small pockets that are to the west of the house location and the clearing limits. Is everybody there? Yeah, I don't know if we have the mouse. We're at someone else's desk and the mouse. Oh, hey, all right, I got it. So give me a second because the mouse is not obeying. Katrina, you do it because I'm going to break it.
Excuse me, Maureen. Ivy, will you sit for Rich Muckle?
Oh, there you go. I don't know if she's still with us.
Yeah, she is.
Give her a shout out again, Tom.
Ivy, will you sit for Rich Muckle? You're on mute.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Continue, Maureen, sorry.
No, my mistake. So this pot, can you see the little hand at least? So
Yeah.
this small pocket, and this small pocket, actually, this is a very deep small pocket. This is all bedrock exposure from the quarrying operation. No egg masses were found in those. So those are just small isolated wetlands. The clearing limits as proposed are greater than 50 feet from any of those. The vernal pools were found, the amphibians were found here and here. And this is an intermittent stream that comes down through here. So I haven't been able to prepare any advisories for the commission at this time. I don't know if anyone else has had a chance to look at it, but I believe that with what this commission likes to practice is a 50-foot protective vegetative buffer around these pockets here, that I think you could probably draft up considerations for approval of this request. But Julie walked it. I think Julie was gonna put in her 10 cents. Oh, she's on mute too, sorry.
Oh, Julie, would you unmute, please?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, Maureen and I walked this with Maureen, and these pockets are very isolated and strictly controlled by either bedrock as it exists or bedrock that they've carved chunks out of. So they're vertical, basically vertical holes. There may be other areas where they could possibly put a house, but this approximation that they've got there on this map is certainly a viable location. I didn't really see any impact with drawing the 50-foot border around those and the limit of clearing.
Anyone else have any comments? Maureen, do you think we're ready to go to draft?
Well, I would like, the direction with the approval of the commission to at least draft up some considerations for the commission action at next meeting.
I'd like to request that Maureen move to do a draft permit on this application.
I second the motion.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries.
And I didn't have to talk.
Now, are there any new applications, Maureen?
No new applications.
Any violations to report?
None that staff is aware of.
Commission members know of any violations? Do we have any correspondence, Maureen?
Did we get any correspondence? No.
All right. Payment of the bills. I'll
Make a motion to pay the bills in the amount 75 to Kakiwak and $90.55 to the day.
Do I have
Second.
a second? I do have a second. Discussion? Seeing none, that you're all ready to vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Does anybody have any more items? Maureen, do you have any more comments?
Not tonight.
Okay, since the commission is ready to adjourn, I'll entertain the motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Good night, folks. Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you. Good
Thanks
night.
for a great meeting.
Aye.